Nice. Before we dive deeper into that, I think it's
Yeah.
always good to understand where someone is now, look back at their past and what they've been through and how life was like growing up for them, especially in like the context of school and qualifications and stuff like that. So if you don't mind, what was a younger Lewis like? What was some of the things you was interested in? What was you good at?
Good question. I think I was a bit of a jack of all trades, master of none when I was little. You know, I used to like doing a little bit of everything. Used to enjoy music. Used to enjoy playing football. Used to be quite good in the classroom as well, which was lucky. You know, sort of do well with my school, and still do. To be fair, always done quite well on the academic side of things. I played football till I was about 18. Sort of at academy level for some clubs in the UK, and then also had like a contract till I was 18. So football was something that I probably thought about pursuing. It never turned out. Never got a pro contract, and then ended up doing a law degree. So yeah, younger Lewis was always focused on getting the grades, doing football, sort of socialising as much as I can. You know, in those sectors, you know, playing football, you do meet lots of other lads that are so your age and interests, of course, you unite on the football pitch and outside the football pitch as well. But yeah, and I think that was sort of the textbooks ladder when I was younger. Just wanted to be a football player, really, but it never manifested.
What was some of the, like, was you not good at any particular subject? Like you said, you were sort of doing everything and you was decent at everything. Was there one thing that stood out?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest with you, I did all right at everything, did pretty good at my GCSEs, but sciences and maths were not the ones for me, to be honest with you. Still today, I remember before my like biology exam or chemistry exam, getting them mixed up and just thinking, you know, which one's which. I did all right in the end, but for me, essay subjects or get me talking, I'm much better than doing a science or any equations.
Yeah, well, I think that's a good point because I feel like when you look at the life of an entrepreneur and you rewind the clocks a bit and look at what they're interested in, a lot of people, like, without almost realizing, like, especially the case with me, like, without realizing, you sort of find almost your passion and what you're good at in the subject. So you're like, okay, I like talking and expressing myself. So I like English, or I like solving problems, like in general. So I fall into maths. Like, I feel like it's quite interesting the way people sort of connect with different subjects. You know, it's quite weird.
Absolutely, and I think it can be tough as well. That I quite enjoyed everything. Maybe not the science as much or the maths, but I sort of enjoyed all the other subjects. And I think that's quite hard for young people,
Mm.
sort of seeing all these great subjects and trying to find which one they want to do for the rest of their lives or which ones they want to do. Like a law degree has probably crossed my mind when I was like 15, 16, but I never thought I'd go on to do that and possibly then become a lawyer in a few years' time. But I suppose that the love of talking, the love of writing, it sort of led you down that path. But yeah, it really, really interesting point.
Yeah. And I know it's a bit of a hard hitting one, but
Mm-hmm.
I'll always tap into this. Whenever someone mentions school on this podcast, I always have to tap in and get their views. Do you think, like, we're the same age, so do you think the school system as it is now is suited to match the needs and the demands of the young people, like to better them and prepare them for the future? Or do you think there's sort of what's the word, a lack of connection between what the young people want to be when they're older and what they're being taught in the classrooms, if that makes sense?
Yeah, very tough question. I think that schooling is pretty good. I think there's lots of positives from the British education system. I also do younger cousins that are going through that now, like primary school and early days of secondary school. And they've got a good mix of subjects. I think that's one positive that we can take away from Britain's schooling is that there is always a good mix of subjects from the sciences and obviously the English and the music and art and sports. However, that's the bit that I think is beginning to be a bit of a weakness for our society. So there's used to be a lot of funding into sort of sports and art and music and creative things. However, we've seen curriculums be a lot more narrowed down now over the last couple of years to more, you know, maths or science or English. And actually, there's a lot of people in this world. You mentioned being creative. I wouldn't have seen myself as a creative, but a lot of friends that just love art and love marketing or just love doing things and using Adobe Suite and whatever.
Yeah.
You don't use any of that at school. I've never heard of that till I was like 20. So what I'd like to see is probably more funding into the creative side of things. You know, there's a lot of amazingly talented young people out there that doing maths or writing essays is just not for them.
Yeah.
So I think there's a lot of improvements to be made. Let's increase budgets for music. Let's increase budgets for sort of sport and art related things. And I think we'll get a lot more people coming out of sort of high school and go to college or unis doing creative things and doing so many great things with their life. So yeah, tough question though, tough.
Yeah, no, it's always a good question to sort of throw out there and see what happens, you know. But just quickly on that point, a lot of people say, like you mentioned there, like you're not really learning the right things, perhaps. A lot of people say, like the main example is Pythagoras theorem. A lot of people say, well, I've spent months or years even studying that, and I've never used it once. But to be fair, I actually know of one person that actually used that theory in their day job. He was an IT manager, and he used that. So it's quite weird how one in probably millions, if not like billions, have used that theory. You know, so it's a bit. It makes you think: are we sort of wasting our time learning certain things in school? You know, like that.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think it's really important that the point that I think we need to take forward is that young people need to try a bit of everything. And I think we need to just be able to look at sport, look at the academic things, look at the creative side of things, and get a holistic sort of view of life. And also, when we touched upon mental health, I'm sure we'll go on to that as well. You know, so we had those lessons, didn't we? The PHSE, whatever, something like that, where we learned about citizenship and things. Yeah. I'd like to see more things on well-being and mental health and digital well-being, the effects of social media, how we can use that to strengthen our day-to-day lives, but also be aware of the negatives and challenges that social media faces. So yeah, but education is always a tough one. I think there's a lot of people do criticize it, and if we compare to other countries, there's lots of things we'd love to nick off other countries and adopt over here. But no.
No, that's a good point. It's a good segue. You mentioned your mental health there, and that's one thing that really stood out about your story when I first ever heard of it. So if you don't mind diving a bit deeper into that, I know it's a touchy subject, but I think, and you probably agree here, it's important to sort of share your experiences so other people can say, okay, there are people just like me going through the same things. So if you don't mind, dive into that.
Absolutely. I think the first thing to say is that sort of for 16 years, I never had a mental health issue, never was anxious. Used to always do, well in exams, as I mentioned. My GCSEs did really well and really happy with that. Went into exams and felt not nervous at all and got the results that I wanted. All great. And I want to admit that I had a really good childhood. Some difficult things happened in my first 16 years, but nothing really of note. And then I think as I went to sixth form, sort of going into the next stage of my journey in academia, I was doing my A-levels, and I'd been there for a couple of months at the sixth form, and things just didn't feel right. And as I say, coming from decent grades, I thought, am I just fitting in? Am I not as clever as I thought I was? A lot of questions, and you start doubting yourself. You start comparing yourself to others. You start thinking what you used to be like when you were doing your essays and comparing your grades you're getting now. And there's a lot of, that comparison to what I was before. So there's a lot of things that started to rapidly unfold at that sixth form in the first few months. It was depression, and I didn't realize that at the time. And I think the key thing to say is that when those first slight worries started to pick up and resonate with me, I didn't get the help for them. So it was, not going to school much, sort of attendance at school was really low. I wasn't going into school. I wasn't socializing as much as I used to. I was getting up really late and just thinking this is just classic teenager stuff that lads do face. But actually it was depression. I wasn't eating much. I completely disassociated myself from all friendship groups and sort of collaborating with people. The football, the love of music, all pretty much went out the window. And that was for a series number of months that I just thought I wasn't fitting in. And that's the best way of describing it. And then in March time of 2016, it was, I sort of tried to take my own life when and it was a really, really tough time. And at that, I went for a walk. And on that walk, I essentially just thought, well, maybe this is it. And I say it's a tough time to talk about it. It is. We're in lockdown at the moment, and everyone's mental health has been really, really struggling. I do always talk about my mental health, But at the moment, when you think back, you also think how far you've come as well. And you think, actually, it's remarkable. There's a lot of young people I meet that have done fantastic things and turned from what is a really negative situation in their life to something really positive. And that's the great thing I would say to people, that we talk about our little problems early enough and they won't stack up and create something bigger.
Well, again, very good point. But before we sort of touch on how to deal with it and stuff, I'd be interested to know how it actually came about for you. Like you mentioned there that you knew you were sort of going through something, but what triggered it? Was there anything in particular? Or was it just the stress of school because you was doing well? Like it doesn't, you know what I mean? It doesn't seem to be a direct trigger there, unless I'm wrong.
So I think it was the new surroundings of a sixth form. I think it was trying to settle into new surroundings. I think that sort of body confidence was possibly something that affects young people, young males and young females, that they're sort of comparing themselves to other people, what they were, what I was as a playing football 5-6 times a week, very, well toned and very fit and very healthy, to what I was age 16, 17 when I'd not been playing as much. There was a stark difference there. And I think as well, as I say, friendship groups, distancing from friends that I'd known for many, many years, and then thinking, why am I not fitting in with these people anymore? Is it because I'm weird? Is it because I'm just, not the person I was a couple of years ago? So what I always say when I'm doing the talk is there wasn't one specific thing, and that's okay. It's not one big trigger. It wasn't one big event in my life that led to the depression. It was an accumulation of very small, minor things, arguably, but that led to this build-up of the mental health. And let's be honest, sixth form, doing A-levels, doing any sort of courses, stressful as well. And there was that added stress in addition to other things that led to that.
It's again a good point. But what can people do, like especially in school, because like you said, you've got these exams, you've got these things that you need to do, and you need to do it by a certain time, and you need to do it well, most importantly. So like, if you can sort of think back and say, perhaps try this, it might work for you. What would be some of those things to help those people in that position?
I think confiding in those you feel comfortable talking to is really important. There are a lot of pressure to go and talk to your GP or go and talk to your teacher or go and talk to XYZ. And actually, people don't have that escapism to be able to go and talk about, because there might be teachers that you can't really look up to and chat about, or that GP that you've seen before didn't really get on with you, and you didn't like their approach in the waiting room or in the room with the doctor. So I think there's always a tendency to push people toward these figures, when actually there's people out there, friends or someone maybe at work or someone in your sports club or your art club, whatever it might be that you do with your life, that you can trust and that you can confide to. So there's a few friends that weren't in my immediate friendship group or art group that I just went to and just chatted about these issues. They didn't know the day-to-day stuff that was happening in my life. They didn't really care. They didn't care about my fallouts with friends. They didn't care about my challenges with, the body image, for example, as I mentioned. But what they were there to do is just listen and just play devil's advocate with me and say, so why you look fine, Lewis? Why would you be worried about that? Or I'm sure your friends aren't actually purposely trying to, leave you out of parties or whatever it was. It might be other reasons for that. And it just helped me think of to overcome that. But the other thing was I talked to my parents the day after that I had those challenging suicidal thoughts. And once I'd opened up, once I'd been to the doctors and got on the road to recovery and put myself first and my mental health first, that's what got me better. It wasn't rushing ahead like we always do and looking at the next destination and trying to get there as fast as possible. It was taking my time, putting myself first, stopping college, and then getting my health right.
You gave me a bit of a chill then when you mentioned like being left out at parties and stuff like that. It brought back horrible memories for me as well. Like I think from my own experience, I think I was distanced at school, and that made it even harder for me. Like you said, it's always good to speak out to your immediate friendship group. But there were a few things that happened with me. Like I got into a bit of trouble. So our secondary school was split into 2 sides. So it was forms A to whatever, and then from whatever to Z. So it was like split into the alphabet like that. and I was in one side of the form for years and years, and then in the last couple of years of secondary school, I got in trouble, so I had to move to the other side of the form, and that ruined me. Like that could have easily sent me under, and I think it pretty much did. It was only for the fact that we had sixth form come in and it shifted things up again that I didn't completely sink, because I remember going through what used to be a good lunch. I'm now going into lunch, walking around the building because I didn't know anyone on my side of the year. So I was literally just walking around, and the teacher was like, "Ted, get out the building, go and play." And it's like,
Yeah.
I'd rather walk around the building than go outside and stand there like a donut watching my side of the form that I barely know play football and not feel involved. It made me feel even worse. So yeah, it's a terrible time at school for a lot of people. I completely understand that. But I think you made a massive point as well. We're all going through different things throughout that age group. So like you said, people leaving you out, it's like from parties or whatever, it isn't on purpose most of the time. It's just sort of they're going through their own thing, so they're like sort of focused on one thing and forget about everyone else. It's such a hard time. So yeah, I completely agree with that.
Absolutely, and the stress is now very different to what they were a couple of years ago, and they'll be very different in a few years' time. And I think that it's just important to look after yourself, look out for others as best as you can. I think we've got to remember that these other people in the friendship group, for example, are going through their own stuff, as you say, and you don't know what's in their head or why they didn't invite you or whatever. But I think it's just having people that you can confide in, that you can trust. It might not be in those immediate circles. It might be an older person. It might be someone at work, as I say. Being able to confide in people is so important.
Well, I think that's why the work you're doing is so important, because you're sort of opening the conversation, and it allows people, obviously directly with Chit Chat, we'll get onto that a bit later on, it allows people to have that conversation directly with somebody else. But I think just by mentioning it on a big stage like your TEDx talk, again we'll get into that later on, but yeah, just by mentioning it, I think it helps in itself. Like the people like Tyson Fury that are doing so much in terms of championing this sort of idea that it is okay to talk. Because I remember seeing Tyson Fury, I thought, oh, he's doing a good job, but I don't really see how it helps. And it's only thinking back now as to how little the conversation was had when I was younger. I'm thinking, okay, I'll get it now, because young people will be looking at Tyson Fury saying, if this guy can talk, and he's from a rough background and he gives us this rough persona, if he can talk about something so sensitive, then why can't I? And I think it just opens it up. So yeah, very important. But with that being said, let's talk about some of the work you're doing. So if we start with Chit Chat, if you don't mind, start off with your latest project. What is that about, and how does that sort of help?
Yeah, I mean, so we've only been going 2 months. We started, the idea came to my mind in just after lockdown was announced, actually, which was probably like the 20th of March or something like that. And I just said, I just wish there was a place where people of all backgrounds can go to chat, to go and have a call, to talk with other people that might not be in the immediate groups or family or friends, whatever, and just chat. And so the idea came off on the back of lockdown, when there was so much uncertainty and anxiety within the country, and our day-to-day lives changed overnight, literally. So Chit Chat's concept is very, very simple. We have a phone line from 9 till 9, 7 days a week, that people of all backgrounds can give us a call on. We have trained volunteers that oversee those calls, and we'll have a chat with people about anything and everything, culture, art, sport, weather, favorite food, movies, what's on Netflix, you name it. Those are the sort of positive conversations that we want to have. We're less worried about sort of, come and talk to us about your mental health struggles, or come and talk to us about how lonely you are. Whilst that is fantastic and that's really important for people to talk about those things, and we are opening up those conversations, we're not labeling as a mental health helpline. We're not a mental health helpline. We're not a counselling service. We're not a place to come and get help or support for any specific things. We are there to signpost people to other agencies and charities if they do need that little bit of a helping hand. So, regardless of your gender, regardless of your age, ethnicity, religion, sexuality, background, where you are in the UK, we're here to have a chat with you via our socials or via our phone number. I suppose, I'm not overcomplicating the concept, because it's simple.
Yeah, that's good. And I think in a way it's more powerful to have that ability to chat about anything rather than, like you said, labeling it and sort of restricting it as no, it's only for people suffering with mental health issues. Because like
Yeah,
we mentioned just then, you may be just feeling a bit lonely. You feel sort of fine in yourself, but you just haven't got many friends. And I think that doesn't necessarily mean you have mental health issues just because you don't have a friend. You could just sort of want to talk to someone and you just literally don't have the ability to talk. So that's where your platform comes in perfectly.
absolutely. I mean, some of the statistics, if I may, very briefly, just from the memory,
Mm.
over 9 million people across the UK are either always or often lonely.
Mm.
Now, that is a heck of a lot of people. And 69% of adults say after a chat, they feel a lot better.
Yeah.
Now, we're not saying anything about mental health there or anything like that. What we're just saying is the power of a chat is amazing. We all know the power of chat. I know it helped me get on the road to recovery with the mental health struggles that I faced. But there are people that might have just finished a day at work, might be a little bit stressed, or a little bit worried, or just want someone to connect with. We're
Mm.
there for them. It might be that elderly person who's not seen someone for a couple of weeks but wants to check in with Chit Chat and have a chat with us. It might be the young person who feels socially isolated from their group of friends who are all chatting on whatever social media channel, but feel a bit left out. So we're there for those sorts of people. You don't need a label. You don't need to have a mental health struggle, but you just need someone to chat to, maybe.
Yeah, definitely. I think it from personal experience, again, it's important to have just a chat. Like this is why I enjoy the podcast so much. Like I said before we started recording, I think it was, I spend the whole day sort of behind a laptop working, not talking to anyone, literally like not physically talking to anybody. And then at the end of the day, it's so refreshing to have a chat with someone, as it just sort of, it gets things flowing again. It ignites the fire within me, even if it's just like ideas or just just a bit of emotion even. Like I've had some sad stories on here, I've had some funny stories, and without talking I wouldn't have felt that. Like my whole day, if you can imagine it sort of on a chart, it's just flat. I'm not really feeling anything different. I'm not really doing anything that sort of gets the chart beating and gets it flowing, you know. So it's always good to have a chat because I can feel myself getting a bit of energy. So yeah, 100% I agree with that. But with that being said, what are some of the things you think we could do, um, apart from sort of reaching out to people? Like, what do you think we can do to sort of work on ourselves? I know, again, it's a tough one, but I think if we can sort of help ourselves as well as get help from others, I think it's a perfect mix.
To help ourselves, do you mean during lockdown or just generally speaking?
Yeah, just generally speaking, but I guess even more so during lockdown because, like, I sort of feel the same as I did before lockdown, but slightly worse, if that makes sense. So I think they're
Yeah,
both
yeah.
hand in hand.
Understandable. Looking after yourself is a very, very, very generalized sort of statement from me, but it's really important.
Mm.
Looking after yourself. I've had a tough day today just because nothing's gone right for me. I'm a little bit stressed today. I'm a little bit stressed, not talking with you. It's fine talking with you, but a bit like you. The day's just been very, very tough and
Yeah.
draining. And to come and have a chat is great and connect with others. But it's okay to, not be okay. It's okay to have a bit of a day where you've not done much and, get out, experience nature, go for a little walk, go for a run, take some photographs. You name that thing that you're interested in and go and do it.
Mm.
There's no comparisons. No one's going to be comparing why you're doing that. No one cares. No one cares. Everyone shaved their head during lockdown. You know what I mean? I don't think everyone is judgmental. I've got a cap on for that reason. And I think the important thing is just looking after yourself, putting yourself first. I'm getting into sort of watching comedies in the evening because I'm not someone that finds much comedy fun, but when you find a good one, I watch it. So a couple of very, very quick, self-care tips, as I say: engage with nature, engage with the outdoors, in whatever sport or outside activity you want to do. Go and do it. Journaling is always quite good as well in the morning. Write your to-do list in the morning. This is what I want to achieve. Make it really realistic as well. And after a good day, if I've achieved all this, I can close the book and I can move on and feel very happy and look to the next day. And then the third thing as well is more of a holistic self-care tip. Listening to music is so powerful. Watching something on TV just to take your mind away from the strains and stress of life is so powerful. Having a chat with someone is so powerful. So try all those little things, and I think the bigger things will look a lot better and brighter.
Definitely. And I sometimes worry when I have people on here and they say, work 24 hours a day, like wake up so early and do this, do that, like don't stop, don't stop. And I sort of, like, without being rude, I sort of want to say, no, hold on, wait. Like, I think you may be getting the wrong message across, because I think it is okay to click pause for a bit, even if you do it for an hour or so. Like, I think it's so important, because there's a thing called burnout, and I've experienced it so many times, especially with the type of work I do, and I'm sure you've had it before. If I don't stop, I get worse, because it's just constant, boom, then I flatline. Have you experienced that as well?
Absolutely. And I'd come back to today, you know, we're chatting in a day where just everything's gone wrong for me. And I think that is okay, just to admit that. I could keep that to myself and just not tell anyone that I've had a bad day, or I can announce it to the world. And, you know, sometimes it's fine to do the latter and just say, it has been useless today. I've achieved nothing. I've not got anything on my to-do list that I want to do today done. Not one thing, because I've been too busy focusing on stuff that is out of my control. But, you know, that's exactly it. Things are sometimes out of your control. You have a plan, you've got to pivot, and you've got to do things in a slightly different fashion. And again, the burnout thing is really important. I think if you do the self-care stuff, that's all well said and good. You know, that's fine. You can look after yourself, but there's some times where you might have just done a little bit too much. You might have worked that weekend and be needing of a break on a Monday or Tuesday. And if you can afford that, then that's fantastic. But I appreciate, you know, people working day in, day out, or going to school or college, you know, but trying to find time for yourself is really important.
And I think, like you just said just before that as well, like little steps, no matter whether you're working and you do like, okay, I'm just going to do, for me, like one blog post, or I do one podcast this week, like little steps in terms of work, but little steps in terms of actually relaxing as well. Like, all right, I've done quite a lot of work today. I'll have an hour of Netflix, or I'll have an hour of like a circuit outside, or just something, something, you know, you can easily do. But I feel like I've had someone on last week on the podcast, hasn't come out yet, but they talked about sort of dopamine hits, and how each step flicks something in your brain as if to say, yes, we're on the roll. Even if it's something so simple as, I don't know, ticking something off your to-do list that was so easy to do, your brain registers that as such a great thing. And it goes a long way in helping you mentally. Of course, there's so many different things, but I think that's one tiny step you can sort of implement in your own life.
Absolutely. To-do lists are amazing. To-do list, checklist, whatever you want to call them, because you're in control of that. You're in control of what order you do it in. You're in control of ticking that task off when you've done it. And I know it's cringy. Some people say it's cringy, but I think checklists are some of the most powerful things to get you through the day.
Well, let's go on, because we spoke about Chit Chat. If we go back a bit, was it in 2018 you started the Blurred Line Group? And
absolutely.
What was that about?
Another very simple concept, I suppose. We identified a need for local charities, local mental health projects to get funding and support. So there's amazing grassroots organisations in communities up and down the country doing great work supporting people's mental health. But from my experience in the third sector, I've been involved for about 4 years now as a director of charities, normally in the mental health sphere. And there's a lot of lack of support out there for charities. So charities doing great work, but charities not getting the funding or support they need to do that work. So it might be that local community group that's, you know, getting, you know, dads or mums together after a stressful day at work, or it might be that community group that's helping, you know, elderly connect, or whatever it might be, or a young person's mental health charity. So since we've started, we've distributed, I'd say about 25k in funding to local mental health charities, and we've done quite a few events. And the whole purpose of the Blurred Line Group is raising awareness and empowering mental health charities up and down the country. At the moment, I think I've had to pivot our business plan with that. I've had to focus more on Chit Chat, because that's taken up most of my life. That's been very, very, very successful since we've launched. So we've sort of put the Blurred Line Group on hold for now, which is all right to do. And over the last 8 weeks, we've been focusing more on Chit Chat and building that, because we've just secured national lottery funding. We've got some other funding that's come in for Chit Chat, which is fantastic. So you've kind of got to go where the money is in business terms, but also go where that funding and support is. And for me, it's Chit Chat at the moment. But yeah, I'm just super passionate about mental health and awareness and supporting projects and the charity sector generally.
Yeah, no, it's good. But again, I'm curious, what is it that drives you? Like having the mental health issues that you've had, and sort of being at the very bottom, like someone can get like the lowest of lows. What is it that's driving you to start these businesses and stuff like that? Because like with me, I know when I was in my lowest, I couldn't have even pictured of sort of starting a business to help other people. Like I was sort of so self-centered, just because I was so worried that I needed to get out of this myself. So what is it, how are you able to sort of do all these charities and businesses and sort of help others? What is it?
Because I know how low I was, because I know how difficult it was suffering from a mental health issue. I know what it's like to be depressed. I know what it's like to feel like the whole world is against you, and that's what like today, but like the whole world is against you. And I think if you've been through those experiences, if you've battled something so challenging as a mental health issue, then you know that getting involved in the project is quite cathartic, is quite helpful to be able to, me putting my energy into helping others, me putting my energy into helping small projects get off the ground, or advising for free on other mental health charities or other charities that are setting up, makes me feel better. So I have lots of calls with typically younger people who are starting out in the charity sector, maybe with an idea that they've got, do loads of work with them, mentoring them and giving them ideas to how they can grow their projects and make it sustainable and profitable and successful. But it's a very, very, I suppose it's a selfish thing. When you say it's self-centered, when you say about yourself, for me, it's also a selfish thing, because by me helping others is helping myself. Yeah. So I think that's a great thing. That's very, very powerful. And I feel better each day getting up knowing that my organisations, the Blurred Line Group and Chit Chat, are helping people in communities. And that's what drives me.
That's good. So it's sort of like a win-win for both parties. You help others and you help yourself. It's perfect. It's like a constant loop.
Yeah, and I think you see that in a lot of charities, whatever the cause, whether it's a cancer charity or a mental health charity or a young person's charity, there's a reason often why those people are involved in those charities. And it's so powerful. I'm not the only one that will say that. And I think I just get it. I know that charities are underfunded. I know that people battle with mental health issues day to day, every single day of the week, in communities, whatever background that you are. And I just get it. I can't say I can relate to your individual circumstances a lot of the time, but I do know deep down what it's like to feel like the world's against you.
And you are talking of helping other people. You also had the TED Talk. So if you don't mind telling us a bit more about that, how that come about and what the topic was.
Yeah, so with the TED Talk, I was approached a couple of weeks before to do that. The topic was, for me, I talked about mental health. And the question was that I asked the audience, and I asked in the talk, was mental health, where do we go from here? And what my central point is that awareness is fantastic. We can erase the stigma of mental health and raise awareness of mental health for as long as we want. Brilliant. But what's the next step? How do we take awareness into action? How do we take those statistics, suicide statistics, of those young people battling and waiting for mental health support? How do we take those statistics and awareness into action and meaningful support for these people? And I gave 3 ways to do that, and I'll say them briefly. Number 1, I think connecting with others is so important in order to collectively make change and collectively make a difference in the mental health sector. Another one is community. Support your community projects. Volunteer with your local community project. It might be a mental health charity doing a bit of fundraising with them. It might be running a marathon and donating those causes, those proceeds to that cause. And the third one is compassion. And that's such a hard thing to do when, as you say, a lot of people sort of are consumed in the day-to-day job, and it's very hard to show compassion to other people when you're having to look after yourself. And the simple way of showing compassion with mental health is to ask twice. It's to not take that, yeah, I'm all right, thanks, as the only answer. It's to go back maybe a couple of hours. Are you sure you're all right? Or is there anything you want to fancy a chat about? Or do you fancy, having a FaceTime? Whatever. Checking in that second or third time isn't pestering. It's actually really, really quite beneficial. So doing any public speaking is quite nerve-wracking. Doing it in front of quite a lot of people for the TED Talk is slightly more nerve-wracking. but just a good experience all around.
Well, it was a great talk, I have to admit. But like you said there, if anyone else is out there like me, sometimes when I'm feeling bad, I sort of I show that off in my behavior and sort of hope that someone's watching, if that makes sense. I know it sounds crazy, but I sort of like, if I'm feeling down at work, like, I sort of sit there like this, like looking off into the window. And in like subconsciously I'm not, I'm sort of hoping someone asks, like, you all right? And I'm like, yeah, no, I'm good. And then like you said, they're like, oh, okay, cool. And then there's been a couple of times when someone's come over again, like an hour later, like pulled me aside and be like, are you sure you're good? I'm like, well, the thing is, blah, blah, blah. And then that's when I open up more. Like, it's weird. Like, I crave the sort of knowing that someone wants to really have that chat and not just, you're right. Because a lot of people, like, will say, oh, you're right. Then you'll start talking and they'll be like, whoa, like, it was just, I was expecting a yes. Like, yeah, I'm good. Like, some people aren't ready for that chat, you know?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we're growing more. That's the awareness point. That's why awareness is so important, right? Awareness is so important. But the more we raise awareness, the more people will know actually to ask twice. It's good. It's good to ask twice. It's good to check in on your mate if not heard from in a couple of days. That is really, really important. But I just think that there's a lot of work still to be done in the mental health sector, a lot of work to be done to reduce these statistics and make more of a change. But we're getting there slowly but surely.
Well, that leads me on to one of my final questions. What are some of the future plans for yourself and your organisations, and what do you sort of aim to achieve in the next even 5 years? I don't know whether that's too long for you, but in the next few years, how do you see the sort of landscape changing?
I think the speed at which Chit Chat's moving, I don't know what I'm doing next week. And I think that's a beautiful thing. It's moving so fast and things are coming in and I'm so busy that we've got to take a week at a time. However, what I do believe is something like Chit Chat, this safe space for people of all backgrounds to connect and to chat. I think there's a real potential with that concept. And I think that if we look to engage more younger people, engage university students, maybe actually form, the concept is obviously a virtual concept. We launched during lockdown. We've not had a chance to meet up with people, but I'd love to be able to make this Chit Chat, more of a face-to-face brand, maybe, actually get people together connecting in real life, once the sort of lockdown measurements are reduced and stuff. But I think I'll always work in the charity sector. A personal goal for myself is to work in the charity sector. I might have a few years in it as a lawyer, something like that. But I think ultimately, doing stuff in the mental health sphere and in charities is what I want to do.
Sounds good. But I think talking there, I think it would be so good. And I would have loved it if I was at school to have an organisation like Chit Chat come into school and sort of act as that person you can talk to without any judgment, without any sort of connection to your real life. So they won't know anything about you and you can just go and spill it all. I think that would be great. Perhaps that's an option there.
Absolutely. And by not labeling ourselves as a mental health charity, because we're not, or we're not a loneliness charity, we're not anything like that. We're a place for people to chat and connect, can cater for everyone. Our strapline is a conversation for everyone, whatever your background. And I think you go into schools, I do a lot of work in schools, and I think that's massively powerful to allow young people just to feel safe and in a casual and non-judgmental manner to go up to someone who's there and just have a chat. And I think that's beautiful. So yeah, I think that's a great suggestion. And you never know what the next months will take place.
Well, I wish you all the best of luck. Final question. Again, another hard-hitting one. We love it on this podcast, hard-hitting questions. What do you want your legacy to be? What do you want to be known as?
I think someone who doesn't care what other people think of the work that I do and just do it for the right reasons. And that's most important. That can apply to entrepreneurs, social entrepreneurs, activists, is you get up each day to do whatever you're doing because it's the right thing to do, not because other people have said you to do it or that other people have criticized you for doing it. Do it because it feels right. And that's what I want my legacy to be. Whatever it is, do it because I want to do it.
I love that. And final thing, then, the floor is yours. If there's any messages you want to get out, anything you want the people listening to go and do, the floor is yours, all yours.
Very simply, I think go and follow us on socials with Chit Chat Britain. We're a very positive brand. We're on all the social medias, and we've just got TikTok, which is going to be quite good for us to start engaging with a slightly younger demographic. But I would say, yeah, engage with us on socials, because we're a really positive non-profit, and there's lots of opportunities as well for people to get involved as a volunteer, as an activist, as a campaigner, or if you just fancy a chat yourself.
Perfect. On that note, like I said, thank you so much for coming on. I look forward to seeing the progress, and I'm sort of looking forward to the lockdown ending, so we can really see what Chit Chat sort of does and how it changes post lockdown. So yeah, best of luck. Thanks so much, mate.
Thank you, Ted.
If only they knew, the hub for young business minds.